welcome back, and in this video I'll be giving you some information on how to split and merge user stories. So as a BA, it's very important that you learn and you master the art of writing user stories. So it's one of the key skills that every business analyst should have, and we are all very much familiar with how a user story should be. So we write it in terms of the invest concept. So if you don't know what is invest, I've taken a video on that, so you can click on the link that I've provided in the description box and you can view that video. So in a short sense, one of the key factors of invest is making it independent and small. Okay, so when you try making a user story independent and small, don't take it in the literal meaning that a user story has to be really small. Okay, so many BAs make a mistake when they try to create a user story. Sometimes a user story, when it's supposed to be a particular size, it's broken down really small, and which is really not needed. So that's why you need to know, and you need to get yourself familiarized and practice how to write user stories. So here in this particular video I'll be giving you some information on how to split and merge user stories and in which circumstance you can do that. So let's get into it. So here are some symptoms for abnormally sized user stories. So either you need to look out for these symptoms so that you know when you should really split user stories and when you should merge user stories. So the first one is user stories with 13 or higher point sizing. So you size a user story. So usually when the user story is 13 points, that's really kind of a big user story. So at that time you need to try and break it down. The next one is the stories exceed a sprint. Okay, usually a single story should not exceed a sprint because it means that it's really too big. You might even be dealing with an epic. So you should try to limit it and always see that if a story is going to exceed a sprint, then it's not a good story. You have not sliced it down properly. So that's one of the symptoms. The next one is stories, they have many conjunctions and or. So when you write a user story, you have different multiple acceptance criteria. You say the story has to have this and this and this and this. So adding multiple conditions and criterias and etc. will only increase the size of your story. So when you have so many conditions, multiple conditions and or conditions, then it can be a situation where you need to break down the story a bit. The next one is the story has dependencies. So the story, always a good way of managing your stories, that story should be independent. So if you find that a story has too many dependencies, then it means that it's still linked to many other stories, and you cannot take up this story individually. It means that you need to complete other stories in order to complete this story. So always try, if there's too much of dependencies, then maybe there can be a chance that probably you can break down the story and try to see how well you can make it independent enough. And next one is stories are combined with high and low priority stories from the same or different sprints. So sometimes a story is dependent on other stories, but you need to look at the other stories, how they are, the nature of those stories, whether they are going to be a high prioritized item or whether it's going to be low prioritized. Because if it's going to be really low, then you might be forced to bring in those low priority items into the sprint in order to complete the story that is dependent on those other stories. So that's one thing you can watch out for, and try to keep stories as much as possible, keep them independent. And the next one is multiple stories are the same with minor changes. So there can be situations when you find some stories, they are almost similar, there's not much difference, but there's a very slight difference. If that's something you see, then maybe there is a chance where you can merge stories. So far we've seen situations where you need to split out stories, but this is an example where if you find something that really similar, some stories are really similar to each other, then there can be a chance where you can merge these stories into one story, and there's no need in order to break it up to the smallest level. So I'll show you some examples. So let's say here this is an example for multiple stories that are same with some minor changes. So taking the use case of as an application user, I should be able to add teams so that I can collaborate with others. So the idea is create a team so that you can add people to the team and collaborate within the team. So here if you see the user stories, I've given an example. Okay, so here if you see, let's take the right hand side. Okay, it's two stories over here. So the first story is, as an admin user, I should be able to add teams so that I can collaborate with others. So this is some acceptance criteria for a story, but you needn't look at this much. Look at this. So the idea here is the user is an admin and the user should be able to add teams so that they can collaborate with others. The next story is, as a collaborator, I should be able only to collaborate in teams and not add new teams. So these two sound to be the same. It's related to a team. Only thing, if you notice in detail, you would notice that based on the role, there are two roles that we are dealing with, an admin and a collaborator. So indirectly it means that the admin should have the privilege and access to create a team, whereas collaborators should not have access to create new teams. They should just be able to collaborate in a team. So never split a story role wise. A story can have multiple roles involved in that. That doesn't mean you split up stories based on roles. Another main example is, never split up stories based on conditions. Okay, so for example, let's say that you want to create a, let's say, a promotion for a particular sales, okay, or for a particular product. So the product can have different promotions based on different purchases that the customer makes. So if there's going to be if the customer is going to purchase for an amount like, let's say, from 1,000 to 5,000, then you have a particular promotion. If it's going to be 5,000 to 10,000, you have something different. The entire story is the same, the functionality, the business case is the same, but depending on the conditions, you're going to have different outputs. So never split stories based on roles, on conditions. That's really bad user story and user sizing. So always try to keep it very simple. So since these two cards are related to adding a team and who should have access to create a team, you can combine that. You can merge it as one card over here. So the idea would be, as an application user, I should be able to add teams so that I can collaborate with others. So the first condition you are giving is, if the role is going to be an admin, then allow the admin to create a team. If it's going to be a collaborator, then it should be, the user should not be able, should not be displayed with the add team button. So that's the acceptance criteria that you can give within one story rather than splitting it up into two. So this is one example where you can merge stories, and this is one example where you can split stories. So as I said, sometimes the story might be really big. You might have symptoms like multiple conjunctions. So here if you see, as an online shopper, I should be able to manage products in my basket. Manage is a very wide term. So it's always good, you cannot explain what is the term of manage. So when you look at your acceptance criteria, you have something like, the user should be able to add a product, should be able to remove a product, and add products to a wish list. So this is something really big. The size of the story is going to be big. And if you see if there is a possibility of splitting up this story, yes, there is a possibility, because we're having so many functions linked in one story. So at this time, when you find many functions related to one story, then it's a good idea to split the story. And how we split the story is based on functions. So here if you see, I have split it up into three. So the first one is going to be, the user should be able to add products to the basket. The second story would be, the user should be able to remove products from the basket. And the third one would be, user should be able to add products to the wish list. So if you notice, all these three stories are going to be independent enough. So this is a little bit of idea I've given you on how to merge stories and how to split stories. You can never master this in one go. You have to keep practicing writing good user stories, and you should gain the art of how well you can size the user story, how well you can create, and how well you can merge or split user stories, so that it's easy for teams to incorporate them into sprints, and it's easy for sizing, and ultimately it makes life more easier for the entire team. So if you found this helpful, please do give this video a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe to this channel, and also do share your feedbacks. Thank you.